Hey guys, welcome back to Argo Visa Special Student Visa Week. So we try to do this event every year, right around the time when all international students are headed back in to get their visas so they can head overseas and start their school programs later on in the fall. And it's always my favorite time of the year. I don't know about you guys. Today joining me is Kat and Anna, who are two of our Argo officers. They're former visa officers who have worked at US embassies and consulates around the world. They also help you, we all help you prepare for this very important interview. The visa interview, I think, is just one of the most underestimated, underrated part of the entire process for an international student who is headed to the United States to study. A lot of students mistakenly think that this could be sort of a rubber stamp scenario where as long as they get their I-20 and their letter from their schools, they can waltz into the consulate, get that visa stamp, and then be on their way. Unfortunately, that is usually not the case. And in fact, I think it's important, and we'll talk about this a little bit more later, but to understand that the burden is actually on you as the international student to convince the visa officer that you are eligible for this visa and that they should approve this visa for you. So it is a time where you really need to be prepared so you can, showcase yourself, advocate for yourself, share with them the best parts of your visa application. And unbeknownst to most of our visa applicants and people that we're trying to help, your visa officer will not know anything about your case until seconds leading up to your visa interview. And so your perception that, hey, they're going to prepare ahead of time, they know that you have an I-20, they know you're getting a scholarship from the school, none of that is true. Okay, so you only have a few minutes, and this is why it's so important to put your best foot forward, because if you don't get that visa approved on the first try, that is going to be very problematic for you moving forward once you have a prior refusal on your record that stays forever, once you have multiple refusals, if you have any sort of complication in your situation, all of that we're going to delve into in today's session. And so again, I just want to welcome my two panelists today, Anna and Kat. They have a wealth of knowledge. Between us, we have probably interviewed upwards of hundreds of thousands of visa applicants just like yourself. And you don't have to do this process alone. Work with an expert who has seen prior refusals, who knows exactly how consular officers think, why we approve certain cases, why we deny certain cases, sometimes seemingly to people who are in almost very similar situations. And so today we're going to delve into the minds of visa officers, how we think about these cases, and how we can help you prepare for the student visa season coming up. And so Kat and Anna, would you guys like to just briefly tell everybody a little bit about your experience, where you have worked, and your experience with student visas in particular?
Sure. I'm Anna, and I worked both in London and in Mexico and Ciudad Juarez. Both of those posts had numerous students, more students, probably in the UK from all over the world. A lot of third country national applicants in the UK that we interviewed, as well as a large amount of J1 visas as well, just given the area of the international students and the international individuals that reside in the UK. So have a broad breadth of experience of interviewing both F1 students as well as J1s in both of those posts.
Yeah, so I'm Kat. I worked formerly at the embassy in Beijing. During my time there, I did, I'm going to say thousands of F1s. It's very, very likely thousands of F1s. A lot of students of varying degrees going to the United States, everything from bachelor's, PhDs, ESL students, community college students, M1s, so it was there was a lot of variety and a lot of different cases. And so, and everybody's slightly different. So there's a lot there.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. And so, I think we're in this great position to really help students. And today's session specifically is focused on community colleges. For students who are applying to a community college in the United States, I think there is this perception out there that community colleges, students going to those places tend to have tougher interviews. And I feel like, when we worked for the government, our sort of talking points were that no, every student is treated exactly the same at their F1 visa interview. But in just being honest and direct with our audience and with you guys, um, I think that that is not true. And I would love to hear what you think in terms of how a visa officer views someone who is headed to a community college. They have an I-20 from a community college. They might be studying English as a second language, or perhaps they are just using that as sort of a springboard into a four-year university. Can you guys share with me sort of what your perceptions are when you get a student at your window who is headed off to a community college?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, yes, it is harder as a community college student or a student who's going for ESL to get through their interview. And I think the main reason for that is that most officers would argue, hey, if you're going for an associate's degree or if you're just doing English as a second language, why are you spending so much money to go to the United States to do this? Why don't you just, stay in country, get English, and then in the future you can come to America and that would be, much cheaper. Not to say that all visa officers are trying to save you money, but there's a logic there, right? Why would you do this now? How does this fit into your plan? And, it's just much easier to explain, I'm going for my bachelor's degree, then I'm going to ESL, and then what's the plan afterwards? There has to be something, right? So that seems to be the issue for a lot of officers.
That's really interesting, Kat. And what do you think, Anna?
Yeah, I would just add to that, embassies do studies of the visas that they issue, and they look at the rate of those students returning or misusing their visas. And so because of those studies, a lot of those studies have shown that people who do go to ESL programs or to community colleges, that their rate of actually misusing the visa and not returning to their home country and using the visa properly is much higher. And so I think that's also why officers have a little bit more scrutiny on cases that are students that are applying for community college or ESL programs, because there is a history of families pooling together their resources to use that visa type for individuals to go overseas and then send money back and work undocumented and work in the United States and misuse. Because of that kind of history and because of that knowledge that's passed on to immigration officers and to visa officers at the embassies, I think officers are taught or instructed to view those types of applicants with a little bit more scrutiny. And then I'll just add also, as an officer in both of my posts, I was always taught to look at the full picture, and I think most officers do, right? So, it's not just that you're going to be studying ESL, but if that's going to be accompanied with the economic conditions of the country that you're coming from, of your own financial family background, all of those factors play a role. So when you're preparing yourself for the interview, those are the types of things that we would work with you in an Argo consultation to try to highlight. Highlight all of the best facts that work to your advantage and make you a qualified applicant for the visa class. So yes, I do think you have a higher burden of proof when you are a F1 student that's applying to ESL or community college. And then, if that's the case, you're already starting out as a disadvantage. So then you're going to have to highlight these other parts of your case and these other facts in your background that make you a strong applicant.
Yeah. So Anna brings up such a good point, and I just want to reiterate this for our audience. If you're someone who has been denied a visa before, visa officers generally tend to look at the entirety of your circumstances. I think most clients coming to us will be like, well, I was denied because my uncle was my sponsor, because that was the last question I was asked before they, gave me a slip that says, hey, sorry, you're refused. And generally, that's not the reason, at least not the only reason. And so if you're someone who is listening to us and you've been denied a visa before because you're headed to community college or for any other reason, the first thing you need to do is to really find out why you were denied in the first place. And the only person who can help you with that is someone who has worked as a former, as a visa officer, like one of us, because most people are just taking a wild guess as to why they're refused. And then they just try to apply again and again. And they're paying another $160, waiting in line, finding an appointment. And they get there and they get exactly the same result because they haven't solved the root of the problem. Whereas when you work with one of us at Argo, and we ask you, okay, tell me what you were asked at your last interview and what your responses were, we can almost, get exactly right why you were denied a visa, because we've done the work before. We used to breathe visas day in and day out, so we know exactly how consular officers think. So step one, find out why you were refused, and then come up with a strategy to see if you can overcome that prior refusal and get yourself back on the right track. And that's what we do at Argo. We're a company of ex-visa officers. You can find out more about us at argovisa.com. One thing I wanted to mention, and I feel like I heard this from both of you in your responses, is I find that with community colleges, I think one thing that visa officers really know is that they just tend to have different standards than four-year universities. And, I know that university advisors might think, okay, gosh, like visa officers are biased against our community colleges. And that's not really the case. I think what's happening is that we know that four-year universities and really difficult to get into schools, like say like an Ivy League school, they're going to do a very thorough job of vetting their students, checking their scores, looking at their essays, having in-person interviews. Whereas visa officers also know that community colleges, some have a very relaxed standard of admission, and they will basically let anybody in. And as a result, visa officers sort of take it upon themselves to be tougher in that interview because they know that the schools are not doing as much vetting of the student. So then the officer has to drill down on, okay, how are you paying for school? How are you paying for your living expenses? What are your plans afterwards? So you might be getting way more questions as a community college hopeful student. And so what I want to say for community college students is you will actually have to be even more prepared than your other friends who are going to four-year universities or Ivy League schools, because your interview will be harder. Nobody is going to tell you this from the government, but we're telling you this because we want to see the best happen for you. We hope that you'll reach your goals of studying in the United States, but it's important not to overlook this interview. It will be a tough interview. And so with that, I'd love to hear from, Anna and Kat, how do you feel about students who are told by agents or well-meaning friends and family members, hey, just give one-word answers, because the less you say, the less chance you have of screwing it up?
I've been hearing that a lot more lately in the consultations that I've been doing, and it's kind of surprising because I'm an immigration attorney in my private practice, and that's the exact opposite of advice of what I would give to my clients in my practice. I mean, I always say, you don't want to give the officer more information than they need to make a decision, but you also don't want to make the officer feel like they have to keep pulling information out of you. That was, a number that frustrates the officer, number one, and it also makes it feel like you're hiding something, right? If you can't, tell me what's going on and what your future plans are, then, have you really thought it through, and are you just trying to get the visa so you can get to the United States, right? That's the first thought that I would have as a consular officer, if you're not able to fully explain what your future plans are. And like Mandy said, I do think there is a little bit higher expectation, not only as a ESL student or as a community college student, but a higher expectation for you just in general. The average 19-year-old probably doesn't know what their future plans hold, or 20-year-old, but as a visa applicant, you are expected to be able to tell the officer, how does this program fit into your future overall educational plans or your future career plans? And to me, as a former officer, that was convincing, right? If the person had, thought through exactly how this was going to fit in, even if they said, I know there's probably, and, Kat and Mandy can kind of explain what their thoughts are on this, but I know there's a little bit of a fine line in whether saying, I'm just using this, if it is the ESL program to improve my English, and then I do plan on entering a four-year program afterwards. I know at the post that I served at, some officers saw that as a good thing, and some officers saw that, oh, you don't plan on coming back, you're just going to keep, extending your F1 visa. So that is where we would kind of work with you in your own individual situation, to determine what's the best things to highlight in your particular interview, given your own background and your own specific issues and plans for the future. But yes, I think definitely one-word answers do not work in your favor most of the time. You do need to elaborate on what you're doing and be, again, not over elaborate, not get carried away and just ramble on, completely not relevant to the question that the officer asked you. But at the same time, it's kind of, and this is what we do at Argo, is help you feel comfortable with intertwining, the important parts of your response into your answer, but kind of leaving out things that aren't relevant or that would work against your case. So it is a fine art, but yeah, definitely, I don't think one-word answers are a help in any way. I think you do need to elaborate the case, but do so in a strategic way.
Yeah, I would totally agree with everything that Hannah said. One of the things that I found with F1 cases, and most F1 cases are, at the bachelor's level or even at the master's level, most of the people who come to us at the embassies and the consulates, this may be the first time they've ever talked to a government official without their parents present. And then add that to the fact that you're talking to a foreign government official, it just is so intimidating. And so one of the things that I found is that just across the board F1s, one of the biggest reasons why people get rejected is actually that they're not ready. They're just not prepared. They are intimidated by the officers. They get scared by the questions, and all of the training and all of the preparation that they've done all of these years to go to America has just gone straight out the window. So they just forget everything. So that I've seen a lot of times, and that's just students writ large, just across the board. So, and then back to the original question with the community colleges and ESL programs, again, you have to have an idea of how this fits into your general plan, right? It can't just be this standalone thing and you don't have any other plans. I get it. You're 18, you're 19, even 20, 21, and you don't have your whole life planned out. That's totally understandable. And the officer is going to understand that. Everybody's been that age at one time or another. But the fact of the matter is you need to think about it a little bit, because you're about to plunk down a lot of money. I mean, if it's not your money, your sponsor's money, your parents' money, and there has to be a reason for that, right? And if there isn't a reason for that, then that really sends the flags up for the officer. And so that's really why you can't answer with just one word or even just a few words. You need to give pretty good and clear reasons why you're deciding to do this, because it's a huge investment. Your future is a huge investment.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for pointing that out, Kat. And I think, for our students, it's like, and you guys bring up such a good point. I think that there were so many student visa applicants that I used to see that would get denied, not necessarily because the officer was sure that they didn't qualify, but it was just a frustrating 3-minute experience trying to talk to this person, not getting any sort of substantive answer out of them. And then this person was not prepared, and then they get denied. And that's like the worst kind of denial, because this person could have absolutely been prepared and been ready and gotten that visa approved. And so you really don't want to end up in that category of student where the officer just doesn't have the confidence to really say, okay, I'm going to approve this person and I'm going to put my own name attached to this person's application and approve them. And that's what you're trying to do for the officer, is they need to have the confidence that you are actually going to go do what you say you're going to do. And if you're hesitant or you're giving one-word answers, that's just not going to happen. That does not inspire confidence. And one of the biggest things that we do at Argo is how can we help you, interpersonally engage with an American officer? How can we help you make sure that for the next 3 to 5 minutes, when you're having that one-on-one conversation with the officer, that you can be heard and understood? That is really what we help you with. And if you're someone who is nervous or has had a prior refusal, please, email us, hello@argovisa.com, visit our website, book a consultation. It is worth it to make sure that you're prepared for this interview, because you don't want to end up getting denied and scrambling and trying to find another appointment, especially, in this time that we're in a global pandemic, where they're really hard to come by. So Anna and Kat, I'm going to start kind of wrapping things up, but can you guys share what would be your top tips for someone who is a community college or an ESL student? I guess, sorry, in succeeding at their visa interview. I shouldn't say in general in life, but what would be your top tips for how to be successful at this visa interview?
Yeah, I think it's important to point out that, officers, at least at the post that I was at, were trained not to look at documents. So I ran into a lot of students that say, but they never even asked for my bank account. I put extra money in my bank account before the interview because I thought they were going to ask for my bank account information. I mean, just be prepared. I think the biggest tip is that you have to tell the officer verbally everything that supports your case in order to get approved, right? You have to highlight what your ties are to your home country, what your plans are for the future, how the educational program that you're applying for fits into your overall future goals, and really, and how you're going to pay for that. So, to me, that's the whole picture. And you really have, and you have a minute to 2 minutes in most places to make that case. So I always tell, my clients in my private practice, like Mandy kind of alluded to, right? Like the officer, they're not going to jeopardize their own career to approve a visa for you. And they have to be able to justify in, 1 or 2 sentences in their notes why they approved the visa. So you in the interview, you have to give them that 1 or 2 sentences that they need to write down to justify the approval. So that's kind of how I think about it, and that's kind of how I try to prepare applicants for the interview. Is that what are the good things about your case? Do you have a scholarship? Do you have really strong financial support from family members? I mean, how are you going to pay for it? What are your future plans, and what do you have to come back to? Because the officer is going to look at, are you an individual that plans on, do you have immigrant intent? I mean, that at the end of the day, that's everything that the officer is assessing. Are you a legitimate bona fide student? So everything that supports your case that will make the officer feel comfortable that you're a legitimate bona fide student, that you can pay for it, and that you're going to return to your home country is exactly what you need to highlight. So obviously every situation is very different. Like Kat said, everybody has very individual circumstances, and that's what we do at Argo, is try to understand your background and help you highlight what will help you get approved and what the officer would consider a fact that strongly supports your case. And so, that's kind of the whole process in a nutshell, I think. But that's what the officer is going to be looking for. So that's what you have to try to communicate verbally in the interview in order to get a successful result.
Yeah, that's totally, I would follow everything that Anna just said. I mean, that getting your documents in order, that's all useful, but being able to verbalize exactly what it is that you plan on doing, I mean, that's the key. And so what I would really suggest to all the students that are planning on going to the United States, community college or otherwise, sit down and think about what it is that you're trying to achieve going to the United States, right? Think about what your plan is. And then I would probably, talk to your sponsors, talk to them and find out what they want you to achieve or what they're hoping you'll achieve, because these things will all inform your final answer when the officer asks you, and it will build layer upon layer of confidence within yourself that you are confident of your decision to go to the United States. You are confident that you will achieve your goals. Yeah. And you have the backing and the support of the people who are sponsoring you, or your parents, or, your uncle, or whoever it is that's trying to help you. Having those very clear goals is really helpful when you're doing these interviews, because you know exactly how to answer that question. And it colors the entire interview. It makes it so much easier. And so, if you don't know, or if you haven't had those conversations, or if you haven't thought about it, that would be my number one tip. After getting all the documents ready, that's all great. But the biggest part is really knowing exactly what it is you plan to achieve. And that will help you so much in the interview. And so that's another thing, just back to Argo, we can help you craft that picture of what it is you're trying to achieve. Again, this is an investment. You're investing in your future. It's not cheap to do these visa interviews, nor is it cheap to pay for school, right? So think carefully about it, and then, find help.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, guys. And as you can see, we've all been experts in this special area of visa interviews because of our lives as former visa officers. And we wish you the very best this student visa season. And we hope that we can be there to help you prepare, support you, get ready for this very important process. Again, you can find out more information about us at argovisa.com or send us an email at hello@argovisa.com. We also hope that you'll join us for the rest of Student Visa Week. We have more panel sessions on different aspects of the student visa interview process. And we're here, so use us as a resource. So thank you guys so much for joining me, and see you next time.